Hello, and welcome to the latest review of Doctor Who Season 2 / Series 15, where we're going to be looking at The Well, written by Rusty Davies and Sharma Angel Warfel, which sees the Doctor and Belinda being quite literally thrust into an adventure with a group of Marines investigating a seemingly desolate mine, in the hopes of figuring out what went wrong, finding a survivor, and an old adversary of the Doctor. Now, this was a really interesting one for me because I went in knowing the twist. So initially, on my first viewing, I wasn't actually that keen and was somewhat negative about how it potentially is overshadowed by its predecessor, being a sequel to Midnight. But on a second rewatch, I found that it was really good. Is it as good as Midnight? Probably not, but it's still a solid story in its own right, and a pretty decent sequel by all accounts. I think it's one of those episodes where, on the surface, you can rule it out as quite generic, being, your standard Aliens riff type episode. But once you look at the little details, it comes off much stronger and is more appreciated. I recommend giving this story a couple of watches to really soak it in, because there are a lot of things that I missed initially. I love elements like the Doctor signing for Alice. It's a good way for him to sort of empathise and sort of get a personal connection with her, while everyone resorts to the subtitles. It's a good way to humanise her, in my opinion. In fact, in general, Alice, the rest of the supporting cast, including the Captain, they're all really solid. They're easily some archetypes which you can be quite one note if you don't do much with them, but I think they all worked really well. Part of me wonders if the success of this story is a result of it being co-written, because I think Russell can sometimes struggle with the little details and overlook them in his stories, which somewhat weakens them in hindsight. Here, I think because they're two people working together, they're able to notice those things and really flesh out all the potential of the story. It's a genuinely scary episode because it uses important tacts in terms of false security and plausible deniability in terms of how it plays out and whether or not the creature actually wins, because you could argue that it does, or you could interpret it as people being paranoid. But that is ultimately up to you, which is what makes it really work, because with a mystery like this, you need some questions open to make it scary, but you also need to make sure that certain questions which will break the audience's immersion if they're not answered. And I think this episode does that pretty well in terms of giving explanations for all the weird things going on. Why did the crew die in two separate ways? Why are all the mirrors smashed? Why is Alice the only one left alive? It gives satisfying answers, but the fact that there's that little bit of doubt that there may be more to this situation really helps to sell the horror of it. Like, we don't know whether Alice is genuinely innocent, if she's already been possessed, if the creature is messing with them, taking what they're saying, and then deciding to sort of play with their expectations. They've come up with these rules, and so tricks them into thinking that they've won in order to get what they want. But that is just one of many interpretations of it. So what do you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.